very good morning once again to everyone present. We are now at the commencement of the second session for the day. For this, we have the honor of having Dr. Colonel V.S. Chauhan and Dr. Colonel Jyoti Prakash as chairpersons for the second session. Dr. Colonel V.S. Chauhan is an MBBS graduate from AFMC and has done his MD in psychiatry also from AFMC. His academic achievements and experiences include Kripal Singh Award for Best Paper in Military Psychiatry in ANSIPS. He has been the convener for Military Psychiatry subsection of Indian Psychiatric Society, and he has 26 national and international publications under his name, and he is also a reviewer of multiple journals. He has received the Brigadier General Commendation UN Mission Award in 2008 and the COAS Commendation Award in 2011. He is a UN mission in Congo 2007 to 2008, and he is a senior advisory and associate professor in Base Hospital, Delhi Cantonment, Army College of Medical Sciences. A second chairperson for today's session is Professor Dr. Colonel Jyoti Prakash. He has a 22-year experience in teaching undergraduates and a 19-year experience in teaching postgraduates. He has been an examiner for multiple universities, and he has published 85 papers and has 4 chapters under his name. He has received numerous awards like the Kekobad Award for standing first at MD Psychiatry in Pune University, the Ravi Pandey Memorial Young Scientist Award by Delhi Psychiatric Society, the JECT Best Investigator of the Year 2007 by the American Psychiatric Association, the Kripal Singh Award for Best Paper in Indian Psychiatric Association, the PPA Award for Best Paper by Association of Industrial Psychiatrists of India, and the Arun Madan Award for Distinguished Community Work by Association of Industrial Psychiatrists of India. Besides that, he is also a certified BLS and ACLS instructor. He is a medical educator and a life skill trainer. He is an assessor for NABH, and he takes keen interest in creative writing and psychodrama modules. I will now request respective chairpersons to chair the session and conduct the proceedings. However, I'd just like to inform that since Surgeon Vice Admiral A.A. Pawar was not able to join us here personally, he has very graciously sent a video of his talk and presentation, which we shall proceed to play, provided our chairpersons grant us permission to do so. So maybe
Thank you, Dr. Supriya. I think please do so, as sir is not there. So it would be not appropriate to recite things of his resume, which have generally been a source of inspiration for us. Dr. Surgeon Vice Admiral A. Pawar had been a sea of knowledge, metaphorically and literally, and a source of inspiration. We would definitely like to hear his recording. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'm grateful to Brigadier MSPK Raju sir and the organizers of the All India Conference of the Association of Industrial Psychiatry of India for giving me an opportunity to present this talk on how the Indian Navy handles stress to this August audience. I'll cover my topic under the following heads. Core of the Navy, types of war machines available in the Navy, peculiarities of the naval service, stress studies in the Navy, measures taken by the Navy to reduce stress, and resilience building in the Navy. Navy has a very important role in the country's defense. India has a vast coastline of over 7,500 kilometers. Most of our trade is carried out through sea. 80% of our oil comes through the sea. So if the enemy blocks our sea routes, we'll be left without fuel to run our vehicles. So to protect our maritime interests, a strong Navy is key. We also have offshore assets, such as our oil rigs and a number of near and far-flung islands, like the Lakshadweep, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which we need to defend from the enemy. In addition, our merchant ships are subjected to pirate attacks in the Gulf, so we need a strong Navy to protect them on pilots. Navy is also involved in disaster relief, where they are used to rescue people who are stranded or drowning to supply relief materials. Unlike the other services, the Navy also plays a diplomatic role in neighboring countries. They display shipbuilding capabilities and also build bridges of friendship with people of those countries. As can be the next few slides depict some of the war machines available in the Navy. This slide depicts transfer of men mid-sea, which takes place quite commonly. It shows the amphibious operations of the Indian Navy, which the army troops are also involved in landing the beaches. Navy also has an active air arm with surveillance aircraft as shown, fighter aircraft including the MiG-29s, other helicopters and the UAVs, etc. The submarine arm is the deadliest arm of the Navy and most toughest, most harsh conditions. The submarine's hot bunking is the norm. Your bed is utilized by an off-duty person when you are on duty and vice versa. Personnel and machinery are juxtaposed in a tight container where comfort is sacrificed for compactness. To escape from a stranded submarine, one has to wear the suit as shown in the top right-hand corner and ascend up through the torpedo tube, or escape through a deep-sea rescue vessel, which is shown below. This mates with the hatch of the submarine, as shown in the picture on the left side, and personnel are evacuated in batches. In cities like Mumbai, accommodation is scarce, hence two families are forced to share a flat, which has its own attendant problems. So what are the top stresses for the Navy? They are the same as for the personnel everywhere. That is, being away from the family, increases in workload, financial problems, changes in the family, and conflicts between military and family responsibilities. But we also need to measure stress to find out what the particular situation in our service. The Indian Navy has attempted to measure stress by carrying out studies to assess stress, assess stigma, which acts as a barrier to care, and psychological autopsy of suicide cases, try and find out the stressful event leading to suicide. The first study on occupational stress was conducted in 2000 to 2003. The aim was to identify stresses among naval personnel and to measure life satisfaction in personnel. Measures used were the occupational stress inventory, life satisfaction scale, and the marital satisfaction scale. Total of 413 personnel were studied, of which 26 belong to submarines, 149 belong to ship, and 238 belong to the shore. 44 were officers, 143 were supervisors, and 226 were junior sailors. When we correlated the occupational stress and the rank of the individual, we found that junior sailors reported a higher occupational stress compared to senior sailors and officers who had roughly stress. When we compared occupational stress and linked it to the place of duty, surprisingly, people serving ashore reported greater stress than those serving on board ships or submarines. So naturally, we found that people with the high occupational stress had a low life satisfaction. So conclusions drawn were occupational stress is more in sailors than in other ranks, and more in people serving ashore than serving on ships or submarines. Later on, we also went to the marital satisfaction levels and found that 30% of people reported being not happy in their married life, and most of these were in the younger age group. The concept of social support was gaining strength, so we thought that we'll measure occupational stress and social support. Social support has been defined as the physical and emotional comfort given to us by our family, friends, co-workers, and others. It is knowing that we are part of a community of people who love and care for us, value and think well of us. Strong social support mitigates stress to a great extent. So this time we studied about 5,077 people, 1,670 were serving ashore, 600 people were serving on board submarines, and about 2,700 people were serving on board ships. There were 3,000 junior sailors, 1,700 senior sailors, and 224 officers. We used the same scales used earlier, but added a social support scale and a GHQ-12 as it had been used by the Royal Navy in their studies as a marker of stress. Here to be found that the junior sailors had the highest stress compared to the other ranks. However, the percentage had increased from 37% to 67%. The percentage of stress in senior sailors and officers had also increased from 20% in the earlier study, 52% and 34% respectively. The oxygen stress level correlated well with the GHQ scores, and this showed that again the junior sailors had the highest percentage of people with a positive GHQ compared to senior sailors and officers. The surprising finding was that in the total sample, more than 50% had a positive GHQ. When we compared the relationship between occupational stress and place of duty, in contrast to the previous study where stress was highest in personnel serving ashore, this study showed high levels of stress on board ships and submarines compared to people serving ashore. In this study, 66% of the married reported to be unhappy in their marital life. Surprisingly, it seems that marriage is no longer protected to an individual against stress. So the concept of social support we have defined earlier as the physical and emotional comfort given to us by family, friends and co-workers, knowing that we are part of a community of people who love us, care for us, value us and think. Social support acts as an emotional buffer against stress. So let us see if it is effective in reducing stress as measured by the GHQ. Social support of a family proved to be helpful in alleviating stress in all ranks. People with high family social support had a positive GHQ compared to people with low family social support. Similarly, those with high social support from friends had a normal GHQ. 56% of sample with high social support had a normal GHQ compared to 41% of the population with low social support. Also, social support significant others, that is your colleagues and superiors. Support from colleagues and superiors was a better indicator of mental health. It will such support were less stressed than without such support. In addition to social support, stigma also acts as a big barrier to mental care. So we measured stigma as it deters many a person from seeking much needed mental help. In our sample, we found that 90% of patients admitted to experiencing stigma. 86% of patients had experienced discrimination. Females experienced more discrimination than males. Stigma perceived was irrespective of age, mental status, rank, and education of the patient. Caregivers perceived stigma and felt blamed by the community. Members of the general population gave similar responses. So the conclusion from our studies was that stress has continued to increase, marital life has become more stressful, social support alleviates stress, and barriers to mental health such as stigma need to be. So what are the measures taken by the service to reduce stress? So these are strengthen social support, reduce stigma, educate our colleagues, enhance mental health setup, reach out to the community, build resilience. The divisional system for service personnel in the Navy has been a time-tested and similarly unique system that provides every sailor the means and forum to interact with officers of the division. This sailor basically ensures a two-way communication in an institutional manner. A group of sailors is formed into a division with an officer as the head and a senior sailor as his deputy. The officer meets with the sailors on a weekly basis and helps them resolve any issues. Lately, the buddy system has also been introduced Whereas buddies assigned to each sailor to help him form friendships. Earlier, leave in the service was restricted with casual leave rarely given. Now there is no restriction on leave. Communication has improved so that families can now talk to the husbands who are sailing at specified times. For families left behind during sailing, family support groups have been formed organized by the CEOs. Measures also have been taken to reduce stigma, to increase accessibility to mental health and to remove fear that a person may have of visiting a psychiatric center. Mental health centers called Arogyatams have been created, consisting of a psychologist, social worker, yoga teacher, and a psychiatric nursing assistant if available. These are located in residential areas of sailors and are meant to be easily accessible so families can go to resolve their issues. In addition, most stations also have a psychologist employed who is available for counseling, SHOs, or NOVA clinics. Familiarize people with mental health problems and help them identify a colleague. Stress. Keep your mate safe and stress management training is now mandated to be a part of all courses. In addition, a pan-Navy suicide helpline has been also established. Our non-psychiatric colleagues often have very little knowledge of mental health. In order to help GDMOs serving in independent locations to identify mental illnesses, an annual training of mental health first aid in every command has been initiated. In addition, an annual CME as part of the Marine Medicine Conference has also been started. For medical sailors who are not psychiatric qualified and serving on board ships, they have to undergo a week's course in mental health at the nearest psychiatry center. Marriage has turned out to be a significant source of stress in present day and naval personnel are not immune to it. To help married personnel and their families live happy, fulfilling lives, interactive lectures by psychiatrists have been conducted. Also, young couples are given a short booklet on enhancing their friendship in marriage and how to amicably resolve conflicts. Short films have been made by the Medical Directorate, bringing out common problems in marriage, how to resolve them, which are displayed greatly. To enhance the psychiatric setup, Splint, which has been in existence in the US Navy for over 40 years and has been found useful to be in elevating stress, has been created on an ad hoc basis in the service. There is one team for each fleet. One psychiatrist and a psychiatry-trained sailor is nominated for duties and posted in the fleet. They have frequent interactions with the ship's staff, introduce them to mental health, and teach them how to identify a distressed colleague and seek help in a non-threatening environment. The Navy has taken up a case with the MOD for the Naval Combat Stress Control Center with 3 Splint teams. In addition, the Navy has created a Center of Excellence in Mental Health at Ashwini under the National Mental Health Plan Scheme V. The scheme provides for faculty hiring in psychiatry, psychiatric nursing, psychiatric social work, and clinical psychology with training for students. An initial grant of ₹2 crores was provided and all are continuing. This has helped in alleviating the manpower shortage to a great extent. In large ships where manpower is more, a psychiatric trained sailor is provided as part of the medical staff so that sailors can seek him for help with their health issues. So this psychiatric qualified nursing assistant was doing intern duties in the Eastern Fleet as part of the Splint. He did an excellent job interacting with the junior sailors in small groups, educating them about mental health. Many sailors who are hesitant to contact a psychiatrist turned to him for help. With his sensitivity and understanding, he was able to resolve minor issues and guide those with major problems to the psychiatrist. So far, we have been dealing with secondary prevention, but how to make our personnel mentally strong so that their vulnerability to stress is decreased. For that, we need to turn to our ancient wisdom. This quote from the Buddha states that to live in the present moment is to be mentally and physically healthy. The secret of mental health is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally to things as they are. Mindfulness is nothing but a Western name given to the ancient Buddhist technique of Vipassana. This means paying attention to things as they really are at any given moment, not what we want them to be. So normally we react to events happening to us without thinking. Through mindfulness, we pause before we react. And this helps us to respond better to events. But does it work in a service setting? For this, we carried out an experiment at Shipyard School at Visakhapatnam. A proposal for the pilot project was sent to the DGMS Navy for approval. On approval from the administrative authority, we embarked on the study at Shipyard School. Here, 73 students were eligible for the study, 69 were recruited, 11 had to be discarded because they did not fill the forms completely. So at baseline, only 69 students could be taken, out of which 34 were allocated to the test group and 24 to the control group. 5 did not complete the interview in each group and had to be discarded. So there were 34 in the test group and 19 in the control group. Procedure. For the study, we recorded the socio-demographic characteristics and administered the following questionnaires. 5 facet mindfulness questionnaires, a 39-item scale with 5 facets: observing, acting with awareness, non-judging of inner experience, non-reacting to inner experience, and total scores range from 0 to 195. A perceived stress scale, which all are familiar with, is a 10-item scale with scores ranging from 0 to 40. Personal resilience questionnaire is a 42-item questionnaire with 6 subscales of 7 items each. And sense of purpose, a positive mental attitude, connect with others, determination, taking control, looking after yourself. Total scores range from 42 to 210. For the test group, we had formal practice plus informal practice. The formal practice consists of 10 minutes guided sessions, 5 days a week, spread over 8 weeks, one-to-one interaction with the instructor. Video sessions were also recorded, briefing and debriefing. Informal practice, which the students were supposed to do on their own, included mindful sitting, mindful standing, mindful walking, mindful eating, mindful yoga. And they were encouraged to do daily off-session practice during their individual times. Instructions were tailored individually for each person. Photograph shows the mindfulness class being conducted. The instructors, the medical officer, and a psychiatric qualified nursing assistant are on the left. 40 such sessions of half an hour duration conducted. So, was there any improvement in mindfulness after this training? The post-test mindfulness score significantly in the test group from 122 to 32 indicated that the intervention has succeeded in making the participants more mindful of surroundings. The perceived stress score declined significantly in the test group after mindfulness training, with a non-significant increase in the control group, indicating that the stress levels had also decreased after mindfulness training. Was there any change in the personal resilience? Personal resilience, as measured by the resilience questionnaire, is significantly after mindfulness training in the test group. This questionnaire was not given to the control group. Facets of personal resilience which included a positive mental attitude, determination, taking control, and looking after yourself. So that showed that mindfulness does improve resilience, that is the ability to withstand and bounce back from stress. We were not satisfied with this. We asked a few of these individuals to give us a feedback. This is what they wrote in their letter: that all trainees appear to be satisfied with the program and requested more such programs to be conducted in the future. They were able to focus better on assigned tasks. Few trainees reported to be able to overcome short-tempered nature. Self-reported anxiety levels have come down. One trainee reported that by focusing on his breathing, he was able to pass his swimming test. But mindfulness, surprisingly, is also being done in other countries. Coincidentally, a study was also carried out in the US Marines around the same period, which is detailed in the next slide. 8 Marine platoons were divided into 2 groups. One group was given mindfulness-based mental fitness training for 20 hours. Subsequently, both were exposed to simulated combat. The results showed that the test group had increased heart rate reactivity with a faster return to baseline, the heart rate and the respiratory rate. A decreased neuropeptide Y and a functional MRI showed that there was a reduced activity in insula and the anterior cingulate gyrus. Mindfulness training thus appears to enhance more focused attention and reduce stress. This slide shows the attenuated activity in the right insula in the test group by shown in the red as compared to the control group shown in the blue. So mindfulness training is like bulletproofing your brain against stress. It has been used in corporates and is now being increasingly adopted by militaries worldwide. In fact, this headline from the New York Times in April 2009 shows that the latest in military strategies is now mindfulness, as its usefulness has been backed by research. So what has happened in the Navy? The Naval Headquarters has directed that Anapana meditation, which is the first part of mindfulness, be conducted for 10 minutes daily in all Navy children's schools. Administrative authorities have been directed to conduct initiation cum training sessions on Vipassana for introducing the concept for personal and their families on half-yearly basis. Personnel are to be encouraged to undergo the 10-day Vipassana course. So in conclusion, stress is not going to go away. It's an ongoing battle. Navy has chosen a multi-pronged strategy to fight stress. Measures include bringing psychiatric services to the community, reducing stigma, enhancing social support, and helping personnel to become more, to have a stress-free married life. Resilience training by means of mindfulness is a new initiative which has been introduced and hopefully will make our persons less vulnerable to stress. Military psychiatrists have a role to play in ensuring that our troops remain mentally fit and combat worthy in these testing times. Thank you very much. I think my first recording was better.
I think sir has delivered it quite well. Thank you, Dr. Shapir. Anything
So
you
may I
wanted to
please just
say?
inform everyone that the next talk will be by Dr. Colonel Sojan Baby and it will commence from 12:15. We regret this slight change from the predetermined schedule. It was due to some technical difficulties encountered by us. And his talk will last up to 12:45, after which Dr. Indla Ramasubba Reddy will start his talk from 12:45. He will speak for two consecutive slots of half an hour each, the entire duration lasting from 12:45 to 13:45. So please let us know if you want any more information about the change in schedule, and I request our guests also to let us know if they want to know any other information about the changes in schedule.
Not
Thank you
an
so
issue.
much. Thank you so much.
The faculty slide which you present, I'll be able to speak about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot to Admiral Pawar in absentia. If there are any queries and if he has come, I think he may be directly contacted for the clarification. It was a good talk. Now we'll move on to Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Sojan Baby, who's been a good friend or colleague of mine. Apart from his MD psychiatry from this institution, he had done PhD in addiction psychiatry from NIMHANS, and he's presently manning the Eastern Command De-Addiction Center quite competently. So his current designation is professor. He has won Kapal Singh Award 2-3 years back. He has authored 8 papers in national international journal. Area interest being evidently addiction, but additionally dissociative disorder, PTSD, and adolescent crisis. He is currently working in an exclusive COVID-19 hospital, and he had active contribution to the cause of nation by way of Operation Vijay, Parakram, and others, including a UN mission. And his total service is 23 years. That means he had any experience to back while talking about de-addiction, the topic per se. Can I have the topic? Yeah. Anyway, so I'll request Dr. Sujan Baby. Colonel Sujan Baby, please. In fact, Colonel Sujan always told that they prefer to be called as addiction psychiatry rather than the de-addiction psychiatry.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Thank you, sir. Shall I start, sir?
Please do so.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to present a case on borderline personality disorder, a great mimicker. Next slide, please. The scheme of presentation will be, I will be describing a case seen during the last year, subsequently going into criteria of borderline personality disorder, some basic informations, and why it is called as a great mimicker, and therapeutic options available, as well as prognosis of the case, and special nature of the case discussed, and some take-home points. Next slide. Next slide. So, this is a 24-year-old female, final year dental college student, whose father is an engineer and an army officer. Mother is a doctor, retired from Army Medical Corps, well-educated, rich family members from both parents' side. Mother diagnosed initially as schizophrenia and later re-diagnosed as schizoaffective disorder on regular antipsychotic with excellent social and cognitive functioning. She has got now non-dysfunctional spendthriftiness and narcissism. Father is a social drinker, value-based, easy to anger, learned helplessness and catastrophic reactions to setbacks. One sister, 4 years young, pursuing MBA. Next slide. She has a troubled childhood, punitive treatment by mother, partly because of mother's illness and partly because of marital conflicts between the parents, plus added high expectation from the mother. The note to be made here is that both sisters face similar brunt of mother's fury without any partiality. High expectations of the client since childhood with extreme ambivalent nature and high novelty seeking. She was the brightest student of her class. Apparently taunted by peers as being chubby, leading to excessive body figure consciousness and frustration behaviors. Inability to form company of friends with same sex, but there is no history of sexual abuse. Next slide. She got selected for dentistry training through entrance examination with a good rank. One strong emotional relationship with opposite sex since class 8. She still tries to maintain that with frantic efforts. Many casual hangouts with multiple males. The contacts made through dating web applications, progressing to the level of behavioral addiction currently. Casual inconsistent use of cannabis along with peers and negative effect drinking of alcohol since dentistry training days. Partying with friends is the mode of relaxation. Next slide. In September 2018, this was the first crisis. Parents received a call from the client's hostel that she is having repeated fainting attacks and complaints of headache. She was preparing for her final exams. She did not have any backlog before that. The detailed information from peers as well as hostel authorities was, for past many months she does not interact with anyone, does not come out of her room, does not take good care of self, not involved in pleasurable activities, taking less food, losing weight drastically, often talking about self-harm, found to be always irritable, many self-harm attempts in the form of hesitation cuts on the forearm, probably having fear of exam failure. Next slide. Taken to a neurologist who found no significant neurological abnormality and referred the case to psychiatrist. Meanwhile, MRI brain showed demyelination of splenium of corpus callosum, which was obtained as consequence of nutritional deficiency. History from client confirmed the history given earlier. She had depressive cognitions, fear of exams, sense of none to ventilate her feelings, because apparently her parents were ventilating to her about their marital conflict issues for emotional support. And her boyfriend was busy preparing for civil service exam. Along with above, history of bulimia came out. Next slide. As per client, she was taunted in dental college for being chubby. History was refuted by hostel peers as well as parents and not corroborated with her images from the college. She was looking thin. Client rationalized above as reason for her excessive body image consciousness, forceful vomitings after overeating, as well as efforts to prove her ability to attract opposite sex, resulting in many casual relationships. Client reported feeling empty from inside, most often in her dentistry days, and could not feel an emotional bonding with anyone in the college. Next slide, please. She was variably diagnosed at different times as adjustment disorder, bulimia nervosa with secondary depression, moderate depressive episode with access to disability borderline, bipolar affective disorder mixed state with bulimia. Over next 7 months, she was treated variably with aripiprazole, escitalopram, clonazepam, duloxetine, fluoxamine in high dose, lithium, valproate, along with systematized psychotherapy and family counseling sessions. Severe acneiform eruptions over the face with scarring with the use of lithium, due to which she had to stop it after 3 months of use. The reasons for multiple medications were multiple consultations, poor response to therapy, and self-harm impulses. Next slide, please. While on antidepressants on high dose, after 11 months of therapy, second-person auditory hallucinations appeared, which was brief duration with severe suicidal impulses. In view of mother's schizoaffective illness, diagnosis was revised to schizoaffective disorder. She was put on haloperidol, and on non-response, she was given 5 cycles of bilateral modified ECTs. Notes of the treating psychiatrist after 12 months into the treatment was following: stop ECTs, subjective restlessness continuing, anger outbursts at home, intermittent intrusive thoughts of hitting self and breaking objects, in car getting negative thoughts of meeting with an accident, abusive towards parents. Next slide. Stopped going to service psychiatrist, started visiting civil psychiatrist, and was continued on antidepressants, antipsychotics, and mood stabilizers. She started dating excessively through Tinder app, went out frequently with multiple partners, and had an online shopping spree. She was diagnosed as a case of bipolar affective disorder. Client was again put on 8 cycles of bilateral ECTs, but the response was minimal. Client's explanation for multiple relationships and shopping spree was the following: Doctor, I could not tolerate inner sadness and irritability. Do not understand. Nobody understands me. Each time I spend with a sensible opposite sex person, it gives me a sense of calmness and happiness. Shopping also provides relief from stress. Back home, I am suffocating and extremely angry. I am feeling miserable with the treatment. Repeat MRI did not show any new changes. Next slide. Client was shifted to mother's parental town, Kolkata, since her uncle is an experienced psychiatrist in civil in Kolkata. June 2020, COVID peak time. First consultation with the person, with me in BH Barracoon. She had severe EPS, learned helplessness, depressed restricted affect, Tinder dating app and casual hangouts, which was almost progressing towards addiction, bulimia nervosa unabated, frequent expressed emotions at home, multiple violent outbursts, severe sleep-wake cycle reversal, not appeared for her final exams. Next slide. After a hiatus of 2 years, plan was made to appear in the final exams, which was in December 2020. After multiple counseling sessions, client agreed for appearing the exams. As the months progressed, she started showing severe avoidance behaviors, frequent cannabis use, Tinder app datings, citing parents for inner turmoil, violent outbursts at home, increasing sibling rivalry with a younger sister who joined the family during COVID time, resulting violent fights at home, repeatedly trying to harm herself. Client frequently quoted, "No one likes me, I am a burden to all, my life is useless, I cannot appear exams, I will fail, no medicines can cure me." She was introduced to long-acting injection risperidone Consta. Next slide. Many times, now this is second crisis, many times considered inpatient psychiatric care in civil setup, but was not possible due to COVID. The only resort was crisis interventions, injectable neuroleptics through frequent OPD visits, constant availability for decatastrophization of the events through telephonic interactions and social media. And that was for the entire family members. Environmental modification was tried in form of separating client from parents and stay at grandparents' home, and later in a separate flat alone as per the demand of the client, but none worked. Next slide. After a rough bumpy journey, client started putting efforts to study for her final exams. Support of seniors who had similar difficulties during dentistry final exams were roped in and found it to be helpful in a significant manner. Insight-oriented and dialectical behavior therapy was initiated with the help of a professional psychologist. Between November-December 2020, she gave 8 final year subjects and cleared 6 of that. One exam she did not appear because she was adamant that she will not give, and another one she had severe chest pain and fainting attacks. Twice she exhibited self-harming and violent behaviors at hostel, needing short-acting parenteral neuroleptics on telephonic consultation because her mother was a doctor, and regular long-acting neuroleptics was continued along with antidepressants. Next slide. Break crisis 3. This is the recent crisis. Breakup with a long-standing emotional relationship during January 2021. Severe grief reactions. Proper type grief reaction she had, requiring intensive crisis interventions. Sibling rivalry. Younger sister started exhibiting excessive sensitivity. He demanded undivided attention of mother, resulting in hitting of mom and my client. Mother needed to move out to the younger sister for a study space in a short notice for 3 weeks. Client grew extremely violent, massive temper tantrums at home, broke many items and tried to harm self, resulting in aggressive posturing by the father. Next slide. During mother's absence, client refused to stay with father in retaliation to his aggressive posturing. Since COVID time started waning, she agreed as well as she could be admitted to an inpatient psychiatric facility. Before admission, she was disallowed to carry her mobile. She threw and broke her expensive mobile. Later, she threw chairs in the consultation room of the civil psychiatrist, needed to be restrained to her bed apart from her regular neuroleptics and antidepressants. Next slide. The current status is that she stayed 3 weeks in the inpatient setup. After initial tumultuous period of stay, she could stay relatively stable at the center. She could not buy or order junk food from online. Bulimia behaviors reduced. She felt moved by the plight of psychiatric patients and started feeling for them and apparent maltreatment of the patients in the center. She had a very strong craving for mobile as well as talked to ex-stable boyfriend who apparently called her in the center, which provided a lot of calmness to her. After discharge from center, she is most often found to be crying, want to ventilate with me, is apologetic to parents, and is most often noted to be depressed. Next slide. The diagnosis is made as borderline personality disorder with bulimia nervosa. Next slide. The diagnostic criteria of BPD hallmarks are pervasive and excessive instability of affect, self-image, and interpersonal relationships, marked impulsivity, and resultant behaviors. These are hallmarks. Next slide. The diagnostic criteria needs at least 5 of the following 9 features: frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment, unstable intense IP relations between the idealization and devaluation of the partner, markedly and persistent unstable sense of self, impulsivity in at least 2 self-damaging areas like spending, sex, substance abuse, binge eating, reckless driving, recurrent suicidal behaviors, gestures, threats, or self-mutilating behaviors, marked mood fluctuations, chronic feeling of emptiness, inappropriate intense anger, difficulty to control anger, stress-related transient short-lasting psychotic states, including hallucinatory states or dissociative symptoms. Next slide. Associated features includes tendency to undermine self when nearing a goal, feeling more secure with non-human objects. Next slide. Predisposing factors are early traumatic experience in the form of physical or sexual abuse, hostile parenting, neglect, early parental loss, or separation. Currently, a tripartite acute pathogenetic model is proposed, which includes childhood trauma at one end, vulnerable temperament at other vertex, and series of triggering events on the third vertex. Next slide. Familial pattern and genetics notes 5 times more common among the relatives of the probands. Familial genetic risk is pooled along with the following disorders: substance use disorder, antisocial personality, narcissistic personality, mood disorders. Next slide. Epidemiology studies have found 2% of general population having BPD, 10% in psychiatric outpatients, 20% in psychiatric inpatients, 30 to 60% among the people diagnosed as PDs. Sex ratio is 75% of diagnosed cases are females. This is in the hospital setting. 30% begin self-harm by 12 years of age. Next slide. Comorbidities along BPD are increased risk for major depressive disorder, substance use disorder, eating disorder, notably bulimia, co-occurring other PDs. Next slide. The complications include transient psychotic symptoms, hallucinations, body distortions, hypnagogic phenomena, ideas of reference, specifically in response to stress, secondary depressive states, interrupted education and frequent job losses, burnout among the caretakers and romantic partners, failed marital relationships, maltreatment of children, premature death or physical handicap from suicide or gestures, self-injurious behaviors or accidents. Next slide. So it is a great mimicker. At different points of the presentation, BPD gets diagnosed as bipolar affective disorder mixed type, cyclothymia, major depressive disorder, atypical depression, substance-induced psychosis, schizoaffective disorder, eating disorder with secondary depressive disorder, adjustment disorder, PTSD, adult ADHD. Next slide. Next slide. The key to the diagnosis, longitudinal follow-up. These are the following things has to be done if you are confidently diagnose a case of BPD. Longitudinal follow-up, intensive regular re-evaluations, regular supportive care. Cluster of chronic feeling of emptiness, inappropriate intensive anger, impulsivity in potentially self-damaging areas, cycles of idealization and devaluation, frantic out of proportion efforts to avoid abandonment are not observed in other disorders. Next slide. Why not diagnosed and treated as BPD? Many often BPD is not diagnosed and attended to. Very often we just write BPD traits because of following reasons. Frequent loss of professional objectivity due to positive or negative countertransference. Myth that PDs, especially BPD, cannot be treated effectively and will result in burnout of the doctor. Tendency to give direct advice on personal and social problems, thereby leading to many problems later. Next slide. There are 4 major stages of treatment. Always the most important stage stays in the crisis management and stabilization phase, which can be prolonged. Awakening of a positive perspective in life and personal values in life. Developing allocentric awareness, other-centered awareness. And finally, an integrated intelligence. Next slide. Crisis management situations will be multiple and a therapist should be ready for that and repeated procedures depending on the crisis. Stabilization phase will be prolonged and time-consuming, which involves combined psychotherapy and medications. Psychotherapy in stabilization phase focuses on mainly on the chief complaints at that time, healthy lifestyle choices, non-threatening evaluation of patients' goals and values, confirming their present mode of coping, self-confidence building exercises, and motivation enhancement for a larger change subsequently, which is almost akin to brief intervention and motivation enhancement therapy in addiction management. Next slide. Medications. A large plethora of medications has been used with variable evidence of success, which is mentioned here. SSRI has been used most often. Lithium has been found in our case because of acne, we could not reintroduce it. Remaining many medicines are there found to be having its effect. Clozapine, apart from the resistant schizophrenia, is increasingly being advocated in BPD for its potent antidepressant, antipsychotic, and mood stabilizing as well as anxiolytic action. They quote that epigenetic effect due to inhibition of histone deacetylase as well as increased production of neurosteroids help in neuroplastic changes later. Next slide. So the psychotherapy aims to progress the client through 3 stages of self-awareness on the path to well-being. At the time when the person comes to us, she or he is in a stage 0, which is an immature need for immediate gratification phase, that is child ego. Then effort is put to progress the client to stage 1, where it is purposeful egocentric stage. Still there will be frequent negative emotions, that is called as adult ego stage. Stage 2 is mature allocentric, other-centered awareness and own subconsciousness thinking, able to supervise conflicts and delay the gratifications. This is known as parental ego state. And the final stage of well-being is effortless, calm, wise, impartial awareness with loving and forgiving attitude, which is known as soulfulness. Next slide. Dialectical behavior therapy has been the cornerstone psychotherapy, which is a form of CBT for BPD. It involves teaching the client to live in the moment, cope with stress, regulate the emotions, and improve the relationship. The basic tenet of dialectics is that everything is composed of opposite and change occurs only and only when there is a dialogue between opposing forces. As a therapist, we should facilitate that. The 3 important components are thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. I'm not going into the details of that. The strategies are core mindfulness, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and emotion regulation. Some examples given for improving the interpersonal effectiveness is by the acronym GIVE. Be gentle, show interest in others, validate others' emotions, and have an easy attitude in life. And sample exercise for emotional regulation is opposite action. If you are feeling sad and want to withdraw from friends and family, make plans to see your loved ones. Next slide. Prognosis. This is a very important slide. Request all of colleagues to listen to this. The MSAD study, MacLean study of adult development, says that by 16 years, 99% of patients have at least 2-year period of remission, and 78% have a remission lasting 8 years. 36% had recurrence if their remission lasted for 2 years, but declined to 10% if the remission lasted for 8 years. Similar results from collaborative longitudinal personality disorder study. By 10 years, 91% achieve at least 2 months remission, 85% achieve remission for 12 months or longer. 11% recurrence is seen at 10-year follow-up if remission lasted 12 months or more. After 27 years of follow-up, a study showed that 10% patients had completed suicide, which is a cause of concern, which should be always the primary motive while treating BPD. Next slide. So the points from prognosis data is that BPDs do respond to therapeutic intervention. It is a myth that BPDs never get corrected. Remission takes place over a long time. Recurrences are common. Longer the remission period, lesser the recurrence chance. I think people who are interested in addiction will understand this statement. It is almost similar. Completed suicide is the biggest risk, need frequent crisis interventions and constant support. Next slide. Challenging nature of the case which I discussed was that she had severe suicidal and violent behaviors. She had difficulty disabling eating disorder, dysfunctional family dynamics, multiple diagnoses at various points, multiple consultations in the past with a sense of pessimism in the client as well as caretakers, almost like burnout client and caretaker. Multiple high-dose medicines with severe EPS, significant social and academic decline, and it presented during COVID crisis time when there was no scope for inpatient care. Next slide. The brighter shades of the case management was there was a good therapeutic alliance which could be made. She is still in a collaborative teamwork after 1 year. Multiple severe crises tided over in this last 1 year. Partial insight gained into the illness with the acceptance of medications. Success in giving exams which had precipitated initial breakdowns. Effective management of suicidal impulses and behaviors and deep psychotic states. Partial improvement of family dynamics. All above achieved in COVID time on OPD basis. Next slide. So my take-home message is BPD is a great mimicker of many psychiatric disorders. Multiple crisis situations is part and parcel of BPD. No single medication or psychotherapy works. Combined interventions appropriate to the situations and mental state needed. Eating disorders, specifically bulimia, is very common. Do not fear to diagnose BPD. Do not fear treatment failure and countertransference. BPDs do respond to treatment, but in long run, attitude shall be dare to care. Next slide. Thank you. I have finished my presentation. If there is any query, I am ready to accept.
Thank you, Dr. Sojan. If there are any questions, we would like to invite them. I think there are none in the chat box. If there are, they can be put in the chat box. We can address it later. Yeah.
Excellent presentation, Sojan.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the opportunity, sir.
Sojan, I have only one problem.
Sir.
Your CV has gross deficiency of publications.
I know, sir.
You must do something about it. Okay, very well done. Thank you.
Now we will move on to next speaker of the day, Dr. Iris Reddy. Can I have the slide on, please?
Not sharing. In the poster. Biodata. You want the video?
Fine. While it is getting projected, yeah. It is my privilege to invite Dr. Iris Reddy for this presentation. He has been a national president of IPS and SHARC Psychiatric Federation. He's published many articles in national and international journal and has been a guest speaker for many national and international conferences. He's been an eminent examiner for NB and DNB and has been served as the chairman of International Affairs Committee, Community Psychiatry Specialty Section, and Awards Committee of IPS. He's written 9 books on Telugu on mental health problems. Probably a community soldier in psychiatry. Has been a Senate member, Acharya Nagarjuna University. Nominated as an expert psychiatrist on AP State Mental Health Authority. He has various awards to his credits. To name a few: AP State Government Ugadi Vasisht Parakram, Delhi Telugu Academy Award, Madras Telugu Academy Award, Pratibha Pushkar from Nagarjuna University, and Rayalaseema Ratna Award. I just hope I am spelling it out correct. Along with his psychiatrist son, Dr. Vishal, he has conducted many PGDNB psychiatry training programs for the last 15 years. I have enriched them or empowered them to conduct efficient ethical psychiatric practice. And he also has started postdoctoral fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry, which is recognized by NTR University and at INLAS Vimhans Vijayawada. He has also organized many psychiatric conferences and organized. So this is just a gist of it, with which we like to call upon the expanse speaker, Dr. Iris, today.
Thank you, chairpersons, and good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I want to thank the organizers and all our colleagues there for giving me this opportunity. So before that, I just want to say this is not a hardcore psychiatry topic, what I'm going to speak, and it is mainly something, whatever you call, some skills, life skills, are how to be happy, how to be peaceful, and probably I think we can also call something like a personality development class. Because I know that in industrial psychiatry, there are not only medical doctors and psychiatrists, there are some other mental health professionals like psychologists, social workers, and also we have got representatives from the industries, from railways and steel plants, and so many others. And also I heard there are some students also. Initially, it was prepared mainly for the youngsters. So anyway, now I think in our audience, not many youngsters are there. Probably I will skip some slides. And I request the chairperson to bear with me if I cross my time, even though it is divided to 1 and 2, it will take about 1 hour, maybe a little few more minutes, because there are some video clippings in this. Without this audio-visual presentation in this presentation, the presentation will not be fruitful. So I'll start this thing. Yeah. So first of all, what is the secret of success in any one of us? Many people say that it is education. I think many people may not agree. I think there are so many gold medalists, university first ranks with high qualifications, but they are not successful in life. We know that. If somebody says hard work, I don't think so. There are so many amongst us who are very hardworking, but still they may not be great successful in their life. IQ, I don't think so. There are so many intellectuals, but still many of them are failures in their personal life or family life. Creativity, of course. Many people are creative, artists, musicians, so many people, but they are miserable failures in their personal and family lives. And EQ, of course, EQ is one of the important criteria for success in life. That is emotional question. I'll come to that little later. Then, of course, ultimately, the most important for the secret of success is positive attitude. This is one of the, so out of all these things, I can say that the attitude and also EQ are more important than our education and hard work. Yeah, this I will skip. So some of the slides I will be skipping. Please bear with me because otherwise, because of the constraint of time also. See, the life is divided into 3 phases. Let us say in young age, what will be there? See, we have got a lot of time. Youngsters have a lot of time and energy, but they don't have money because they are dependent on their parents. When they become adults, they have got a lot of money because they are earning, and they have got a lot of energy also. But the problem is they are busy in their profession or employment or whatever it is in their business, so that there is no time to enjoy or relax. But they have got a lot of money. In the old age, they have got a lot of time because they are retired. And of course, they have already saved a lot of money. Money is there. But the main problem is they don't have energy. They may have some paralysis or heart stroke or cancer or whatever it is. So these are different phases of life all of us will pass through. Yeah. See, the main thing, philosophy of life is everyone wants to live happily and peacefully. Many of us wish to have money, comforts, luxuries, good jobs, status, etc. If money and wealth alone give happiness to all of us, why all the rich people in the society are not happy? I think if money is not the only thing, otherwise there are so many crore-patis and millionaires, but still they are not happy. We know how they have a lot of family problems and the children are spoiled, or drug addicts, or divorces, suicide, so many things. So money and wealth alone will not give happiness. And at the same time, material positions don't bring happiness always. Instead, they might give you more problems. If you have got more wealth, so income tax rates will be there. If you are an employee, ACB rates, then problems with relatives because they may ask for some loan and you don't give. Jealousies and kidnaps. Your child may be kidnapped because you have got a lot of money. They will bargain for some lot of money to release the child. And litigations and even killings. We are seeing in the press every day because of a lot of money and all these things do happen. There is no end to happiness. Jobless want jobs. Employees want promotions. Persons with one flat wants to have another. There is a small, in between I'll be telling some small examples and stories. 99 Club. There is, I think some of you are aware of this 99 Club. A king and his minister were there in the kingdom, let us say. They were going around the village every evening to see how their people are, their life standards are there. So they will be going in disguise so that the people will not recognize. Every day when they pass via the outskirts of the village, there is a small hut and one poor family, one husband and wife and 2 kids are there. So they will be sitting on the evening when the sun is dawn. They'll be sitting at the small cot outside the hut and they'll be playing and chit-chatting and singing and enjoying. So the king asked the minister, "Arey, what is this? We have got such a big kingdom and so much of wealth and all these things, but every day we have got some problem and there is no mental peace. Anytime anybody may attack us, or within the kingdom also there may be some enemies for us, but still we can't get sleep properly. There is no mental peace." Whereas this fellow, very ordinary fellow, very poor fellow, not even having even a house, just a small hut, and still they are enjoying every day. We see they are playing and singing and chatting and all those things. The minister says, "I will give the answer after 2-3 days." So what happens is after 2-3 days, this minister, next day what happens is he gets one small bag with 99 gold coins, and drops in the backyard of the hut. So after 2 days, again they return the minister and the king. These people, instead of playing and singing like every day before, now they will be searching and searching restlessly. They will be wandering in and around the hut. Then the king asked the minister, "Why all these days they were very happy and singing and enjoying? Now they are restless, wandering, and all these things. What happened?" Then the minister says, "King, see, previously they were okay. When I only dropped this 99 gold coins, instead of thinking that they have got 99 gold coins and they have become little rich and they are prosper, but they were thinking that what happened to the 100th coin? They thought that why only 99 coins? There should have been 100 coins, and so one it is missing. So it should have fallen somewhere. So they were going on searching, even in the day and night with lanterns and other things, searching for the 100th coin which was supposed to be missing for them. So their mental peace has gone, their sleep has gone, their singing and chatting, playing, everything has gone. So the minister says to the king, "See, whatever money we get, the human beings, they will not be satisfied. Still they think there's something more they have to earn and get. So in the process of to achieve their goals or becoming more wealthier and richer, they lose their mental peace and their happiness." So this is a small story. So there is no end to happiness and wealth for us. And another thing I just want to say, pleasure and happiness. Many of us people think that pleasure and happiness are same, but there is a difference. Pleasure means sukham and happiness means santosham. See, pleasure is more related to the body, whereas happiness is related to the mind. Pleasure means it is external and it is not permanent, whereas happiness is more internal. I'll give you the example. For example, pleasure means what? For example, if I want to have some chicken biryani or rasagulla, and if I eat a rasagulla or chicken biryani, I get satisfied and happy. That is pleasure. So that is immediate, that is related to the body, and it is coming from the external source, and it is not permanent. Again, tomorrow, this happiness doesn't, this sukham doesn't last longer. Again, tomorrow again I want one more rasagulla and one more chicken biryani. So it is only temporary, whereas happiness is not like that. It is more internal. It is more related to the mind, and it is permanent. For example, a couple is married for 10 years and they don't have a child. They pray so many things, they go to so many doctors. After 10 years, they get a child. Then they are so happy. So this is permanent. This is happiness. This is real happiness. Understand? So pleasure is different from happiness. Yeah. See this graph. See, this is on the left side. This is a value of something. For example, before you don't have, somebody wants to have a lot of money, lakhs or whatever it is. So before getting this money on the left side, see the value of money they know. Oh my God, the value of money, even 1,000 or 1 lakh, they realize. Once you have in the middle, you see, when you have that money, whatever you wanted, that 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs, then the value comes down. Before getting the money, the value is so much. Once you get it, the value comes down. Again, after losing it, by chance you lose the money, you invest in some business or shares or something, you lose that 10 lakhs or whatever it is, again, the value becomes much more than before. So the value changes from depending on the circumstances. See, I just want to say the happiness survey. It is a survey called once in a year. Some international agency does this survey. This is called happiness survey. So this is the last year, 2019. You see on the left side, on the top. So India ranking, for example, in 2013 it was 117 rank among the world countries. So in 2019, you see it has fallen down to 140th rank. 140th rank in the happiness index. Whereas the other countries you see on the right side, Pakistan was 67. They are much ahead. They are 67 means they are much comfortable place. And Sri Lanka, China, you see all those things. And these are the 10 happy countries, 10 unhappy countries on the right side. The happiest countries are Finland, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Netherlands, so on like that. Whereas the most unhappy countries are South Sudan, Central African Republic, Afghanistan, Tanzania, like that. See, the super countries like UK, everybody thought US and UK will be in the top, #1 rank or 2 rank. Whereas Finland was the #1 happiest country, even though it is a small country. UK ranked 15, you see at the bottom, Germany 17, US 19, Japan 58, and Russia 68. And what are the variables they have taken? They have taken some criteria, the survey. The key variables for this happiness survey was income, #1. It is not alone income, freedom, trust, healthy, health, life expectancy, social support systems, generosity, corruption also. So these are some variables they have taken, and basing on this, they have given this ranking. Yeah, this is what I have just now said is 2019. Now the latest report also has come. 2020 is the latest report. So now it has gone down to India, has gone down a little less, 144 now. And Pakistan from 67, it now has come to 66. Now it is 66. So this is the latest 2020th happiness survey among the countries. So Pakistan is somewhat better than us in this happiness survey. And another thing is money and happiness. See, some studies were done when money alone will give happiness or not. See, they have conducted a study. This is a real study they have done, a psychological study, whatever you call, on some people they have taken 20 lottery winners who earned about 20 lakhs, 10 lakhs or 50 lakhs in lottery. And also another 20 paraplegics. On one side, 20 paraplegics who developed paraplegia. And then on the other side, 20 lottery winners. They have followed these 20 people for a period of 1 year. See, the people who won the lottery, 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs or whatever it is, the first day when they got the lottery, they were extremely happy. They enjoyed. They gave parties to others. They were so jubilant. Is it not? That is a natural reaction. Whereas the paraplegics on the other side, 20 paraplegics, the first day when they suddenly got paraplegia, you can understand their agony, their tragedy, their suffering, their crying. So this is on the other extreme. So what happened is they studied these people for a period of 1 year. The people who got the paraplegics, who got paraplegia, and as they improved with the treatment or physiotherapy or medicines, whatever it is, every day or every week, there was some signs of improvement. For example, previously urinary incontinence was there. Now urinary incontinence has stopped after 2 months. Then the sensations have improved after 3 months. Then little bit of motor movements have started. So what happened is these paraplegics who were highly depressed, severely depressed on the first day of paraplegia, in a span of 6 months or 9 months, there were signs of happiness. Even that little improvements in their paraplegia made them very happy and satisfied. They are improving. Whereas you see the lottery people who won 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs lottery, who were very happy and jubilant on the first day. What happened? His sister came and asked him, "Oh, when father got me married, he didn't give me any dowry. So now you got 20 lakhs lottery, give me some 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs like that." This fellow refused. So she became enemy to him. And his brother came and asked him, "My daughter is getting married. Please give some money for my marriage expenses." So this fellow didn't give. So they all became enemies. Till now they were all together. But once he got money and all these things, so all the relatives also started going away from him. The jealousies have started. And somebody came and asked for loan. He didn't give. So they also become enemies. And then a lot of money in the house. So he didn't know what to do. So he started taking alcohol. He started going for gambling. So all these things. So within 6 months or 8 months, he lost all the money and his health is spoiled. Relations are spoiled. So this is only to tell you how whether money alone gives happiness. So the study between the paraplegics and these people who got lottery is only to show that money may not give happiness. At the same time, it may bring so many tragedies also. Yeah, this is what usually this is meant for the students and youngsters, which I was telling the snake and ladder. So like a life is like a game of snake and ladder. And in our education, in our academic system, we are taught about our degrees, either MBBS or MSc or MBA, whatever it is, only for our livelihood. We just get our livelihood and earn. But nowhere in our college education or wherever it is, nobody teaches us how to live peacefully and happily. This is never told in our curriculum. Even in psychiatry, I think it is not told. So these are some of the basic life skills. Everybody should have that: effective communication, critical thinking, problem solving, managing emotions, decision making, empathy, creative, all the interpersonal relationships. So this is lacking in our academic system. So unless we have this, we have only degrees, MBAs or PhDs or whatever it is. That is not going to make a person happy and peaceful in their life, and that may not be enough to come up in life or reaching greater heights in life. Then we have got what is called a creative brain and logical brain. See, this is, of course, all our medical people know the weight of the human brain is about 250 grams, and it attains to its maximum weight of 1.5 kilo by the age of 18 years and then stops growing. So we have got right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Understand? So right hemisphere is supposed to control, is called a creative brain, whereas left hemisphere is called to be logical brain or intellectual brain. So, for example, a mother has got two children. One child may be very good in mathematics, he gets 100 to 100, but he may not be able to write a diagram or a sketch, or he may not be able to do some essay writing or whatever it is. He is lacking in creative abilities. Whereas the other child may not get 100 to 100, he may get only 40% in mathematics, but he is excellent in drawing very good diagrams or art or music or all these things. So creativity differs from people to people. One may be good in IQ, another may be good in EQ. This is about the creative brain and logical brain in our biological systems. Yeah. So what is IQ and what is EQ? I think, of course, as I already told in the beginning, this is not a hardcore psychiatry topic. This is more of a general topic. I think but there are some people who are in the non-medical side, administrative side also. Probably for them, it may be a little informative. See, I told you already, to be successful in life, EQ is also important. Even if you don't get first rank or university gold medal, it is okay. See, some of our classmates who are 10th class failed or intermediate failed, but they are so successful in their lives, in their business or contracts or even politics like that. But we, after MD degrees or PhDs or whatever it is, still most of us may not be very happy and successful in life because we may have IQ, but EQ, some of us may be lacking. But whereas the other fellows, they have a lot of EQ. So they know how to communicate with others, they know how to manage their problems and issues. That's why they're successful in the politics or business and other things like that. So this is only to say that whereas IQ stops by the age of 18 years and the brain stops growing, whereas EQ develops throughout your life. There is no end for EQ. The more you are matured and age, you get old, your EQ improves by your experience. If you have done some mistake in the past, now you will try to rectify and your emotional quotient will improve. So this is the difference between IQ and EQ. Of course, EQ is what exactly is EQ? It is our to control one's own emotions, to know the positive and negative, plus and minus in your personality, to understand others and to adjust with others. That is most important. How you adjust with others and having good communication skills, to be flexible and compromising in nature. These are all very things. I'll give you an example. The Satyabhama example, I think all of us are aware. Krishna and Satyabhama. When Krishna doesn't give this Parijata flower to Satyabhama, she becomes very angry. She becomes little adamant, and when Krishna enters the bedroom and was sitting at the foot end of the Satyabhama kicks. Krishna tries to pacify her, but Satyabhama kicks with her leg on Krishna's head. Understand? But usually, if it happens to any normal husband, he may kick back her, or he may shout her, or scold her, or beat her, and walk out of this thing. What Krishna says, he just smiles and walks out from that place slowly. So then again, at the end of the Krishna Tulabharam, when Satyabhama and Rukmini want to weigh Krishna, and Satyabhama puts all her jewelry, diamond, all her wealth in the balance, but Krishna cannot be weighed. When Rukmini comes and puts on a tulasi leaf, immediately Krishna gets weighed. So then again, what is the reaction of Krishna? He just smiles. So when Satyabhama kicked him, he smiled. And when Satyabhama could not weigh him with all her wealth also, he just smiled. So Krishna is one of the classical example we can say for emotional intelligence. Any average person in that situation, when Satyabhama kicked him, probably we can understand he might have gone for a divorce or beaten her or whatever it is. So this is an example how you should maintain your emotional intelligence and how you should keep up your balance. Yeah. Too much of emotions are not good. I think already people are thinking, who is this lady? She's a Kushbu. She's a South Indian Tamil star now. So too much of emotions are, I will tell you why I have kept Kushbu here. Excessive anger, short temper, stubbornness, all these things are very not good for physical and mental health. Highly emotional people easily get into trouble with others, frequent quarrels, arguments, easily fall in love affairs is another thing. are more too emotional, you may fall in love affairs also fast, and you may break up also fast. Hasty marriages and divorces, suicide attempts, rash driving, accident proneness, and breaking laws. See, in Tamil Nadu, the people are supposed to be more emotional. They are known for their emotional and all these things. So, M.G. Ramachandran, the previous former chief minister, died. Many people committed suicides. And when Jayalalitha died, many people committed suicide and they cut their tongues also. Understand? Khushbu, an example, is one of the only heroine in the entire Indian film industry. And for whom a temple was constructed in Tiruchirappalli in Trichy. For a cinema heroine, a temple was constructed by her fans in Tamil Nadu, in Trichy. No other cinema actor got this privilege. And basically, Khushbu is not a Tamilian. She is a North Indian, but settled in Tamil Nadu, and she is more popular in Tamil films. So this shows the too much of emotions, how they can take a person to any extent. And of course, another slide on emotions, health, and lifespan. Research proved that negative emotions impact our health adversely. Minor ailments like common cold to major disease like cancer, heart attack, and even traffic accidents are linked to emotional reactions like anger, tension, anxiety. This has come in New England Journal of Medicine. Understand, stress disturbs our immune system, all of us know. So this is about our emotions kill our health also or spoil our health. The another study conducted, see, they say that connecting with others is always good for us, our health. A study was conducted on 972 John Hopkins medical students and studied after 30 years till the age of 55 to 60 years when they grew up to that age, concluded that who classified as loners, that means who are highly introverts, had 16 times more cancer than those who ventilated their emotions to friends and others. This is an observation, this is a research finding. Alcoholism, mental illness, and suicides are much higher among people living alone. Good social ties can make at least 10 years difference in life expectancies. Definitely your lifespan will be more if you have got a more social ties. So that's why the message is keep good relations with family, children, close friends, or co-workers, and visiting temples, clubs, and other social ties are very much essential for a peaceful, healthy living. Then a slide about genes and lifespan. Genes can explain about 35% of life. See, for example, my grandfather has lived about 90 years. Probably our lifespan also may be nearing 85, 90. So, but gene alone cannot decide. Other factors such as your lifestyle, for example, your smoking, alcohol, stressed job, behavior, personality, they all play a vital role. So, some of these personality traits also will tell you, will decide about your lifestyle. 1 minute. See, this I'm going to show a small video clipping. It's only to show this is a sweet experiment which was done, and a few children were called and they were given a sweet, and they were asked by the teacher if they can restrain of eating this sweet for another 10 minutes. She will come back and give another sweet. Understand? So how many people could withstand that 10 minutes or not? This is a small kid, and this experiment was done for, and then they were followed for till they got the age of 25 years. Just see this this thing, 25 years, and so a psychological study, and they found that most of the children who could not control their temptation and they immediately ate the sweet, many of them were school dropouts, some of them became drug addicts, some of them had broken families, and so many things like that. Not all, but some of them significantly. Whereas the other children who could control their temptation or emotions or whatever it is, so they were highly successful in their life, like they become good in academics and their family life and their occupational life and all these things. So this is one of the small example to show that. Yeah. Now this I am skipping the live hub. Just I will give the classification of live because I thought there are some undergraduates, but I came to know there are no undergraduates. See, this is a slide meant for the youngsters. So for most of us, the love is only one. But sociologist John Ellen Lee also, she classified love into 6 types. One is eros, love based on physical attraction. And ludus is playful, casual variety of love. They will have a lot of multiple girlfriends or boyfriends. Sturge is friendship leading to love. This is the most solid and stable type of love, and many times this love leads into marriages. Understand? Initially they are friends. In the first year MBBS, let us say they are good friends. By the time they become house surgeons, they get married. Then maniac is something like a crazy love. For the sake of love, they may kill the boy or girl, or they may commit suicide. Then pragma is the practical love. This is a business type of love. They calculate whether how is the boy, what is his background, and what is the girl, her background, like that. Basing on they make a checklist, and then they enter into love. Agape is a more traditional ideal love. This is where it is more giving rather than taking. I'm not going to much details of this love because this is mainly meant for youngsters. Now, of course, one slide on what are the criteria for lasting marriages? Many people have done some surveys. Some people say intelligence. If your spouse and you are intelligent, then probably you'll have a lasting marriage. Is it true? I don't think so. Humor. Okay, your husband is very humorous. He has got sense of humor. Is it going to last your marriage forever? Character? I don't know. Trust? Of course, the survey has said none of the above. Many studies have revealed that low expectations on the spouse. This is the most important criteria for a lasting. You don't have too much of expectation. My husband should be like this. My wife should be like this. If you have got too much of expectations, then you will be upset. Success of marriage mostly depends on us rather than the other partner. Of course, some of the examples. See, when I joined my PG in Demands, I'm just telling a small example come joke. So when I was taking on the first day or second day, my chief was taking us for rounds. So one fellow was shouting, Rani, Rani, Rani like that. So my other colleague Chetan, who joined along with me in PG, so he asked her, sir, why this fellow is shouting Rani? Then my boss said, because he loved this girl Rani, and she betrayed him and she married somebody else. So he got disappointed in love, and then probably it has made him to go into acute psychosis. So then my friend wrote down, so when girls cheat boys, they may become mad. Okay, we went to the next word. There another fellow was also shouting Rani, Rani, Rani. Then my friend Chetan asked my boss, sir, why this fellow also, it seems Rani is very popular. Why this fellow also shouting Rani? Then my boss said, this fellow married that Rani. Then he developed acute psychosis. So then our friend wrote down, so women are responsible for developing psychosis in men. Anyway, this is only a lighter read. It can be the other side also. So, so apologies to the women. So this can happen to Rani or Ramu. Anyway, so this only to show that the lasting marriages don't depend on any of these things. Of course, some amount of luck also has to be there. Some amount of lot of hard work also is necessary to keep up our marital relations. Then most important things in life. Many people say that money is important. Is it? Friends, education, place to live, investments, health, spouse, career. Out of all these things, the most important thing in love, many surveys have revealed that a supportive and understanding wife. This is the more, even you may not have money, you may not have education, you may not have a lot of wealth and other things, but still, if you have got an understanding and supportive wife or husband, I think your life will be more peaceful and happy. So this is the one of the key for that. Anyway, I am not going to play this. This is from a Telugu cinema to support this, what I have said now, because many people may not understand this, so I skip this. Yeah. Coming to type A, type B, I think I did not tell to the psychiatrist. This is mainly meant for the non-psychiatric group. Of course, what is type A, what is type B? Many of us, our people know. I am not going into the details. Of course, time management is another very thing for success in life. Like, for example, urgent and we should give these things. Urgent and important. Certain things are urgent and important. For example, tomorrow there is exam, your internal exam or semester exam. And also today, your favorite hero movie also is released. So you have to choose whether to go to a movie and don't read today, or you prepare today and write your exam and then go to the movie. So which is urgent? Exams is very important. Movie you can see, if not tomorrow, day after tomorrow. But exam will not be conducted again and again. So you have to give priority which is urgent and which is important. Exam, see, movie release, seeing movie is not very important, very urgent. Any day you can see. And not urgent, but important. This is not urgent, but it is very important. For example, you are looking after your family and children's matters. They may not be urgent. That means you should have done today itself. But they are very important in life. If you ignore them, tomorrow you may become away from your wife or children. So this is not urgent, but very important. You should give equal importance to your family and children also. Then the other thing is, it is urgent, but not important. For example, tomorrow your classmate's marriage is there. Understand? In Bombay. And again, tomorrow you have got an exam also. What to choose? Your classmate is asking you to attend the marriage. So marriage is urgent. You can't ask your friend to postpone your marriage, to postpone her marriage for the sake of the exam. So what you can tell is, because exam is important, you cannot be conducted again. So you attend the exam and tell your friend that I will not come for the marriage, but I will come for reception, or maybe after 1 week I will come and see you like that. So life, which is important, which is urgent, which is not important, you have to weigh and assess and decide. Then only you will be successful. Then there are other things like nothing is not urgent, not important. Like what? Chatting, using excessive cell phone, all these things are neither they are urgent nor important. Of course. Yeah. Now, how to reduce stress? There are so many things. Of course, it is not for psychiatrists. I already told there are so many. Your meditation or prayer or listen to music. For me personally, whenever I am little stressed out, I listen to old Hindi songs and Telugu songs. That gives me a lot of relaxation. For some people, going to the temple. For some people, deep breath exercises. Understand? So, or recollection of some pleasant events from the past. So, all these things can give you relaxation when you are under stress. Of course, this is that is the Chief Minister, former Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Dr. Y.S. Rajashekhar. Basically, is MBBS doctor. He was the Chief Minister in 2008. He visited our hospital and inaugurated the DNB course and the Silver Jubilee celebration. So some such pleasant events. Even whenever I'm saying, okay, CM has come to, he has not gone to any other private hospital in the state. So he has visited me because of my association with him. So this always gives me some satisfaction, happiness whenever I recollect this photo. So this type of things, I think everybody will have in their lives some pleasant events. Of course, whenever you are unpleasant or something in a sorrowful situation, probably try to recollect some positive events, some happy incidents. Yeah. Coping with stress. See, whenever somebody has got stress, you should how to cope. The most important thing is share your problems with your near and dear. The usual saying is happiness doubles and sorrows becomes half. And no pain, no gain theory. Kuch paana hai to kuch khona hai. So whenever you want to achieve something, you have to lose something. Understand? For example, before medical entrance, somebody has to appear for the PG entrance or medical entrance. Understand? You have to forego your TV, your cell phone, your social settings, going to the restaurants and all these things. So then only you will be successful in your entrance exam or get a seat in MD or MBBS like that. So no pain, no gain. Don't compare with others and feel that you are the only unfortunate fellow in this world. There are so many unfortunate people like us in the world. Understand? But you think that you are the only fellow. Be realistic. Too much of optimism or too much of pessimism, both are not good. Do your best and leave the rest to whatever it is, whether you believe in God or destiny or whatever it is. Anta mana manchige. This is Telugu, this thing, one king's story. So whatever happens in life, you take it as a good, in a positive way. Understand? So certain things probably when I don't get, for example, when I didn't get MBBS seat, I was a little upset and unhappy. And I joined my MBBS by BSc course. Then, of course, later I got MBBS, then I was happy. And psychiatry also, it was more of a accidental thing. But now when I joined MD psychiatry, many people discouraged me. We are going to this type of subject, there are so many other attractions like that. But now I feel that probably if I had not taken psychiatry as my profession, probably I would not have got this much of whatever today I am. I could become the national president. I was a successful practitioner and all these things. So whatever happened, that time I didn't know. About 40 years back, 45 years back, when I got MD seat, I never knew that I will be like this. So whatever happens in life at that time, think probably God has given you this for your good only. Then don't seek 100% perfection in everything. So many people think like this is a problem. They want perfection 100%. Cannot happen, understand. And in other cases, most of the times, time is the best healer. Whenever you have got a problem, of course, that day you'll be very much upset. You'll be very sorrowful. You may be crying. But after a few days, the intensity of sorrow will come down. So time is the best healer. And another thing, the philosophy of life is nothing is permanent in this world. Nothing is, your sorrows are not permanent. Your happies are not permanent. Summer is not permanent. Rainy season is not permanent. So anything is not permanent. Understand? Yeah. This you see, this is a very, very, very message giving video I am going to show you now. This is a Barcelona Olympics in 92. One guy who was supposed to get the gold medal in running. Unfortunately, while running, he gets a muscular cramps. And what happens? Just see this video and carefully you observe this video. What happens?
Troubles come and my heart burdened be. when I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more.
See, this video gives a very two good messages. One is, when you don't give up, that means it is not a defeat. Still, in spite of all his agonizing pain, he continued. That itself is a victory for him. The second thing is, when you are in crisis, when you are in a tragic situation, your own people who are emotionally attached, like his own father, coming with him and supporting him and all this. So it's very important in life. When our own people, whom we think they are our near and dear, if they support you when you are in crisis, when you want to die or when you are defeated, something like that, so that it gives a big relief and solace to anybody. Then another important message is, in life, silence is the best tool. Silence is the best weapon when you are in an argument, when you or your wife or your husband are arguing. So sometimes there is no end. Ultimately, it may end up, we don't know where. Either she goes back to her parents or she may attempt suicide. So many things can happen. So best thing is silence. Just keep silent, go to the other room, shut your door and stay there for an hour or two. Then I think things will settle down. That is another important message. See, I once felt sorry for myself because I had no shoes. See, when father and son were going, the son was always, he's a poor fellow. He's an ordinary employee, lower class employee. The son was asking for a Nike shoes because most of his classmates are wearing Nike shoes. But the father says, we don't have that much of money, so I can't afford to buy a Nike shoe for you because whereas other children are very rich. But the child was bothering him every day. So one day, the father and son were going on the road, and suddenly the child saw a man on the street, on the road. He was just crawling on the road. Understand? So he was not able to walk. Then the child asked the father, "Daddy, what happened? Why he is not able to walk?" Then father said, "Beta, this boy, unfortunately, he doesn't have legs, so he can't walk in his lifetime." Then the boy immediately replied, "Dad, I will never ask you for Nike shoes because God has given me at least legs to walk." Whereas the other fellow doesn't have even legs to walk. So lifelong it is a misery. I don't have that misery. So I am safe. So I am thankful to God. So though he said, so that is another important message. So many of us know we are not content with what we have got. Still we think there is something more like that. There is a problem. And another important message, there is always a silver lining behind the clouds. Clouds will come and clouds will go. And they all have a silver. See, you see that behind the cloud, there is always silver lining. So for whenever there is a tragedy in our life, the principle is that, of course, today there is a tragedy, tomorrow there will be a tragedy, but at least after a week or a month or 2 months, the tragedy will not be permanent, it will go. Again, the brightness will come in our life. So this is whenever somebody is suicidal, somebody is desperate and in a despair. So everybody should remember that no problem is permanent in our life. I think many people know about Jack Ma. He started Alibaba company in America. He's basically a Chinese fellow. And he says, life is today is cruel, tomorrow is crueler, and the day after tomorrow is beautiful. For example, before joining MBBS, many of us have struggled to get MBBS seat. Then, of course, that was cruel. Then again, to get a seat in MD, again, it was crueler. But of course, after passing MD, and once you settle down in your profession and working as a faculty or a practitioner, then life is definitely tomorrow is beautiful. So this is what Jack Ma said once. The person interested in success has to learn to view failure as a healthy, inevitable part of the process of getting to the top. So failure doesn't mean that it is once for all is closed. So probably this is a stepping stone for the success in future. I think many of you know him. He is Warren Buffett, one of the top rich persons in the world. So one day, once somebody asked me, what is the success for your coming in life? He said, you only have to do a very few things right in your life. You only have to do very few things right in your life, so long as you don't do too many things wrong. You need not do too many good things, but don't commit a mistake. Don't do a blunder. That itself is enough. You may not do something extraordinary, but don't do something blunder. Yeah. This is another message from a Swamiji. Even though it is from a Swamiji, see the beautiful message for our philosophy of life. Yeah. Just see this video.
Like that, I tried dealing with it internally. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a beautiful slide. When followed in life, I guarantee you, life will be different. I guarantee you, if this is applied in life, we can have peaceful night's sleep. Here it is. Do you have a problem in life? No? Then why worry? Do you have a problem in life? Yes. Can you do something about it? Yes. Then why worry? Do you have a problem in life? Yes. Can you do something about it? No. Then why worry? Isn't it? Isn't it? Why worry? क्यों हम लोग चिंता कर रहे हैं? Why are we constantly bogging our minds down with anxiety? Anxiety that is just absolutely not allowing us to have peace of mind.
Yeah. So this is a beautiful message. Of course, even though it is from a Swamiji, it applies that of course, it is not so easy as Swamiji has said. Many of us may not be able to practically apply it in our life, but still, if you can practice, probably it may be possible. Yeah. These are some of the success stories. In such a young age, many people like Sachin and Binny Bansal of the Flipkart and Mark Zuckerberg of this Facebook and Marissa and Mayer, President and CEO of Yahoo. In such a young age, maybe 25 years, below 30 years, they all become so successful and internationally famous business people. Yeah, this is another good philosophy of life I am telling you. Just see this video and understand, enjoy this. Carefully follow this video, the statements given there. The other important thing in our life is many people will be bothering whether work, family, or personal life. Why not all the three? Which is important? Whether your profession is important, or spending time with family is important, or your own personal life like going to the club or going to playing a game, which is important. Why not all the three? Work, family, and personal life should be complementary to each other and not conflicting with each other. Some are successful in their careers, but fail in family. We see some of our friends, they are so good in their career and profession, but they are miserable failures in their personal life or family life. Whereas some others who have a vibrant personal and family life are below par in their profession. This we observe amongst us also. Being successful in one sphere of life at the cost of the other is not a healthy sign. Quality family time is getting divided by the omnipresence of media and the internet. So in the long run, family happiness and a decent personal life are key determinants of successful career. Yeah. Other thing is, can prayers change our fate? Most of us every day we go to the puja room and pray for some time. So people say that whether prayers can change our fate. Yes, it cannot change. The point is prayers cannot change the circumstances and our fate. But what is why you should pray every day? However, the prayers give us a mental strength and confidence to face the challenges of life. It gives us mental peace. It gives us confidence. Prayer is the best solace to human beings. Of course, this is from Gita. I think I'm not going to repeat. This is from a Telugu video, which because many people don't know Telugu, I'm not playing this, which gives a very good philosophy of life. Yeah, this is another important slide. So a boy was there in a god's shop. Let us say the god is the owner of the shop. The guy goes and asks the god, Lord, what do you sell? The god replies, whatever your heart desires, my son. Then the boy says, please give me peace, happiness, prosperity, and freedom from fear. This is what the boy is asking. Then God said, I am sorry, my son. I only sell seeds. I don't sell fruits. A very beautiful saying. I only sell seeds. This is up to you whether to make it a fruit or not. So I can't give the final output. Final output is depends in your, that is in your hand. See, another important thing in life is attachment and detachment. Many of us are very much attached to our own, like to our children, or to our grandchildren, or to our property, or some instruments, or whatever it is. So too much of attachment to a person or an object may bring about many problems in life. Because by chance, if you lose that object or a person, you'll be terribly depressed or disappointed. So some amount of detachment always keeps people stress-free. Understand? I'm not going to tell the examples because the paucity of time. So that means you can, of course, you have to be attached to your own people and your own things. But at least you should also have some amount of detachment always. Otherwise, it will be highly disappointing. Of course, there is another thing from the many people might have read this Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist fiction. And it gives a very, I'll just give briefly an example. A child was asking his father, Daddy, tell me how to be successful in life, how to come up in life. So the father says, Baba, I don't know. There is a Swamiji at the other side of the river. He has got an ashram. Go and ask the Swamiji. It seems he is expert in telling life skills, how to become successful in life. So the boy goes across the river and many people are waiting at the Swamiji's ashram. So the Shishyas won't allow him. Then he somehow goes to the Swamiji and asks him, Swamiji asks, why you have come, Baba? Then the child says, no, Swamiji, my father sent me because you are expert in giving good advices, how to come up in life. Then Swamiji says, Baba, I am very busy now. There are so many VIPs waiting. So you do one thing. He gives a small spoon and put some coconut oil, and he will ask the child, you carry this spoon with coconut oil and go around our ashram. There are so many peacocks, a lot of good flowers and trees and lawn, everything. You enjoy the scenery, scenic beauty, and come back within half an hour. By the time I'll be free and I will talk to you. I'll give you some advice. And you see that this spoon with coconut oil doesn't fall down. Just you carefully maintain that. So this boy goes around, comes back after half an hour. Then Swamiji is free. Then Swamiji asks, have you seen my garden and lawn, everything? Yes, Swamiji. Then what happened to the coconut? Coconut oil, Swamiji, you asked me to enjoy the scenic beauty of your ashram, but in that process, the entire coconut oil fell down. Then Swamiji said, Arey, you have done a mistake. Now once again you go back. He has again puts coconut oil and asks him to go around the ashram. So again he comes back. You ask, the Swamiji tells him, again you go and see and come back and see that, of course, carefully you maintain the spoon with coconut oil. This time the boy returns. And now Swamiji asks, what have I done? What, Swamiji? This time I could not enjoy the other side of the ashram because I was holding the spoon and coconut oil, and my focus was only on this, whether it may fall down any time like that. So I could not see the other side of the ashram, I could not enjoy. Whereas in the first instance, I enjoyed the ashram but lost the coconut oil. And Swamiji says, my dear, you have done both times a mistake. because first time you have concentrated on your enjoyment and seeing, and you are not given focus on the work. The second time you are focused on the work, which I have given the task, but you have missed the enjoyment. So both are not good for successful in life, because to come up in life, you have to make a balance between your work and also your enjoyment. Then only you will be successful in life. This is a small story from this alchemist. Of course, relationship issues. This is another important thing. See, debit card means what? We deposit some money in the bank, for example, 10,000, and then use whenever you need. Credit card means without depositing any money, you enjoy the facility. So relation should be like debit cards. That is, you can only draw after you deposit your love. See, you can't expect your friend to always show the same reciprocation without you, from your side, not doing anything for him. That is credit card. If you really want the same concern from the other side, you have to first deposit your love, affection, your whatever, your goodness to him, then only you can expect. So our relationship should be more like a debit card, not like a credit card. That is another important thing. This I am skipping. Yeah. Maybe another 2-3 minutes, I'll try to close. Life is an adjustment, finally. So these are some of the basic principles. Better to accept whatever we can't change. There are certain things which we can't change at all. So better to accept and just adjust. Adjustment. Make balance between work and pleasure, which I have just now said. Bad days are only temporary. Good days will definitely come soon. As I already told you, summer is not permanent, and rainy season is also not permanent. We may not be able to change the people and society, but to live peacefully and happily in this world, we have to change ourselves according to the circumstances. This is very important. We have to be flexible. We have to be adjustable. If you are adamant and stubborn, then your life will be more miserable. Life is an adjustment. Who are more flexible and adjustable will be successful in life. This is another important principle, this thing. Problems in life are like seasons in a year. We get so many seasons. No season is permanent. So problems are also not permanent. Always have a positive attitude towards life. A small story I will tell you. See, one mischievous fellow, one Swamiji was sitting under a tree, and he was telling the foretelling, like whether you will get married, whether you will get a job or not, like that, no, Jyotisham or whatever it is. So this mischievous fellow wanted to tease that Swamiji by playing with him. So he goes with a parrot. Understand? He holds the parrot, a live parrot, behind this thing, and asks the Swamiji, you are telling for so many people about their future. You tell me whether this bird is alive or dead. This fellow thought, if the Swamiji says the parrot is alive, he wanted to strangulate the parrot and show the dead parrot to him and say that what he has said is wrong. And if the Swamiji says the parrot is dead, then he wants to show the live parrot and tell him that what he has said is wrong by showing the live parrot. Then the Swamiji says, my dear, everything is in your hand. Whether it is a positive thing or a negative thing, it is all your attitude towards life. So this is something like whatever happens, it is not in others. It is in your own hand, your own destiny and your own efforts. It all depends. Life means to win some and lose some. Kuch pana hai to kuch pana hai already sold. So this is the some of the basic principles in life. I think some of you are aware of the joke. This is a joke only, but I'll just repeat it. Probably some people have not heard of this. This is a very interesting joke. See, one of my friend who completes Shishtipurti, I think in a Hindu tradition, Shishtipurti is there. That is the husband attaining 60 years of age. So he gave a big party in a Taj hotel in Vijayawada. So he invited some of their friends like me, and we all went for the dinner. So before the dinner, the husband took the mic and said, see, we are married for about 35 years. And not even a single day, myself and my wife quarreled with each other. We never had any friction. We are always so enjoying, happy, and nothing happened. We are so happy. Then we were asked, what is this, man? In 35 years of marital life, there is not even a single day or hour when you were quarrel with your wife like that. Is it possible? In our lives, most of the times we quarrel, we shout, again we compromise, and so many things happen. But how is that you say that in 35 years of your marital life, nothing has happened any time? We asked him, Baba, tell the secret so that we will also follow the same footsteps. Then the husband took the mic and again said that, see, in our house, in our residence, all the major things are decided by me because I am the husband, I am the head of the family, I am the male. So I decide all the major things. And my wife, of course, she is a female. She doesn't know much. She is not educated much. She decided all the minor things. Then I asked him, what are the major things and what are the minor things? Husband said, some of the major things he decided is whether India has to produce a nuclear bomb or not. That is a very major thing. It is a national issue, international issue. So I will decide that. Then whether India and Pakistan should go for a war or not. Yeah, this is other national and international issue. So I decide that. So these are some of the major things which I decide. Then I asked him, what are the minor things that your wife will decide? No, what is that? Whether my daughter has to go for MBBS or engineering. That is a small issue she will decide. Whether my son has to marry her brother's daughter or my sister's daughter, of course, that is a small issue she will decide. I don't, because I will always say only nuclear bomb or India, China, India, Pakistan war, something like that. So then I understood, okay, Baba, that is the reason why you people never get quarrel, because this man only always thinks of the national, international issues. All the family matters are settled by the wife. If such is the case, I think no couple will have any problem. Yeah, this is the last video I'm showing you. Life is like a cup of coffee. Very, very beautiful message. All of you should carefully watch this video for a minute. Thank you. This is our Shantivan Rehab and De-Addiction Center. So I once again thank you for bearing with me for nearly 1 hour, and I thank our chairpersons and also the organizing committee and all our colleagues for patient listening. Initially, I told you this is not just a hardcore psychiatry topic; it is a general topic. But I thought that there are some useful philosophies of life in this. So I take this opportunity to thank everyone. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much for your excellent talk. Sir has covered about Sukham and Santosham, life skills, academic system, which should be incorporated in the academic system, the EQ and IQ process. Sir has explained the complexity of life with beautiful anecdotes, beautiful videos. I hope the young population would carry this forward. Not only the young, the colleagues like us will also take a lesson from him. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
But
you, Vinay
because
ji.
of the paucity of time, sir, we will not be able to take questions. Thank you very much again, sir.
Okay.
From the
Thank you.
organizer side and from my own side.
Thank you.
Over to the organizers for further session.
Thank you so much, sir. We are extremely grateful to our respected chairpersons, Dr. Colonel V.S. Chauhan and Dr. Colonel Jyoti Prakash, for presiding over this session. We extend heartfelt thanks to our speakers for the brilliant sessions and the lessons which we will carry with us in the times to come. We shall now proceed to disperse for lunch to once again assemble at 2:15 p.m. Thank you so much.